Oh, and I'm going to pull up our agenda too in a second. You know what? I think we should go ahead. Oh, look at you, Viren. I speak and then it just pops up like magic.
35. Yes.
That's awesome. Very good. Well, you know what? I do think we should go ahead and get started. Let's be mindful of everyone's time, and you know, whenever anybody else has a chance to join us, they will.
Correct.
What's that? Oh, and I see that we already have. Okay, we have this on top. All right, so let us go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody to our, what month are we? January 2021 Social Injustice, Social and Racial Justice Task Force.
Social injustice.
Exactly. Oh dear. Of Community Board 4. And just as a quick reminder for all who are viewing this tonight on Zoom, this is a public meeting. It is being recorded. It is available on YouTube. And we're glad for everybody who's able to join us. Viren and I are the co-chairs, and we have lots of other fabulous community board members who are on our task force with us. We have circulated an agenda ahead of time, and it's now should be on your screen. Hopefully you can see it. We'll sort of be following the format of our agenda this evening. And we, as you can see, we have a presentation and then some discussions that are all teed up. After the presentation this evening, our very lovely panelist has told us that she'd be happy to take some questions as well. So first we'll ask if there are any questions from our task force members. And then if we have some time, we'll see, maybe we can even see if there are any questions from the public. And then after that, we will go on to the rest of our meeting. And with that, Yohaira, can I turn it over to you? And just to let everyone know, she is with the Civilian Complaint Review Board, commonly known as the CCRB. And I bet she can give us a much better explanation of her role there, and then sort of give us an overview tonight of the CCRB and how civilians can raise concerns and complaints if they feel that something has not been done correctly. And if to ensure accountability, as we know, that's one of the main things that our task force has been focusing on, is just accountability from all different city agencies. So anyway, Yohaira, with that, I turn it over to you.
Perfect. First and foremost, thank you so much for inviting us to be here, and also really kudos on sharing this on YouTube and really expanding the reach of this information to New Yorkers. So that's fantastic. I was wondering if I could share my screen. If that's not possible, I can just talk about it. Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So I wanted to provide a brief overview. Hope I can do it this way. For folks, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Oh, sorry. All right. Can everyone see that? Perfect. So we are a city agency. We're completely independent from the NYPD, and we're governed by a now 15-member board. So that is a result of recent charter change. As you know, back in November of 2019, there were a litany of different changes on the ballot on November 5th. And one of them was to expand our board to include 2 additional members. And that's gone into effect. So what that means is now our board, 5 are directly appointed by the mayor, 5 are directly appointed by the city council. So the city council appoints 1 representing each borough. 3 are designated by the police commissioner, but appointed by the mayor. And those designated by the police commissioner are not current members of service, but do have a history in law enforcement. We have 1 appointed by the public advocate, and 1 that is the chair that governs the board is co-appointed by the mayor and city council. And our current chair is Reverend Fred Davey. He is actually, since it's a working board, he is currently at Columbia Theological Seminary, so he's a reverend there. So what we do, we're a city agency that investigates police misconduct, right? And what we really like to share with folks is, you know, we take a step back, like what is the ideal role of NYPD, right? It's to, you know, protect New Yorkers, maintain order, render aid, but also to uphold the laws. And what that means is that their role is to uphold the laws. It doesn't mean that they're above the law, right? But there are rules that are specific to police officers. And those rules are found in what's called a patrol guide. So it's a public document. You can find it on our website, but also online. So as an agency, we use the law and the patrol guide to determine if misconduct occurred, right? It's a strict guidelines on how they should make a stop, interact with civilians, etc. So we use these two major documents to determine if we get a complaint, if a police officer has committed misconduct. But it's important to note that we don't investigate all allegations of police misconduct. There are 4 major categories that fall into that, into our jurisdiction. And a way of remembering that is the acronym FADO, F-A-D-O. The first is force. So if force is used in an encounter, full stop, that's our jurisdiction. What we would do is determine, given the totality of the circumstances, you know, the time of the call, the type of incident, if that force used in that incident was excessive or unnecessary, right? And that's very important to note, that just because a police officer uses force doesn't necessarily mean that misconduct occurred, but let us do our job to determine that, right? So if you witness something, if you're unsure, if Lord forbid you've experienced something, you can use this as a resource to conduct a full investigation to see what happened there. The second is abuse of authority, which is a pretty massive category. So some of the things that are included in that are improper stops, improper searches, a police officer refusing to provide their name and badge number or a card upon request, which I'll talk about in just a second. It also includes a police officer threatening to call ICE. So when talking about jurisdiction, NYPD has jurisdiction over New York City, right? So a police officer asking for my citizenship status or anything like that is outside of their bounds and something that we would investigate. For D, it's discourtesy. So that can include profanity in an interaction. It could also include an inappropriate gesture, like a middle finger. Or for example, if a police officer requests my ID, I give it to her, but upon returning that ID, she just throws it on the ground. That's something that we would investigate. And last but not least, offensive language. So that's language that inappropriately refers to my race, my ethnicity, my sexual orientation, my religion, my disability status. When talking about force, there are instances where I discuss force may be used. Offensive language, that is something we take very seriously. There are no situations where a police officer can be using that type of language in those circumstances. Is something that we would investigate. I want to talk briefly about the Right to Know Act. If those of you that are familiar with it, it is a law that was passed in 2018. And what that means is that in certain situations, police officers have to proactively provide me with a business card at the conclusion of that interaction. That business card has that police officer's rank, their precinct, a way of leaving a comment or complaint, which is 311, and some general information on how to receive, for example, body-worn camera footage. So I won't get into the minutia of the levels of stops, but what's important for all New Yorkers to know is at any point I can request that card and a police officer must provide it to me. But there are situations where a police officer on their own accord must proactively give that to me. For example, at the conclusion of a stop, at the conclusion of them asking accusatory questions, etc. So it's just important information for us to know. And if you feel that a police officer hasn't done that or want to check in on that, that's something that we would investigate. Another major element of this law that I wanted to highlight here is that it also expands the contours of searches and consents. So that means that if a police officer does not already have the legal justification to search me, again, there are situations where they can, stop and frisk me in certain situations, search a specific area. In situations where they don't have that legal justification, they have to proactively ask me for my consent and record that consent on their body-worn camera footage. So that means, Yohaira, can I go into your bag? And inform me of my right to say no. So Yohaira, can I go into your bag? You have the right to say no. So it's just a very, we can go into the minutia at a later time, but I just really wanted to highlight that element. And also, as always, a police officer must provide language access services when needed. So a brief overview of the, a CCRB complaint. Folks can call our office, which I'll talk about in a second, and the intake speaks to the complainant and sees if it is something that falls under our jurisdiction. So what I always say, and the intake department will be mad at me about this, when in doubt, give us a call. Worst case, it's something that could be referred to internal affairs, or it might not be a member of service for that of NYPD. It could be MTA or a state police trooper. We have a bunch of reference numbers and avenues to direct those complaints. But if it is something that falls under our jurisdiction, we would have that matter sent to an investigator, which will look a little bit more in depth into that case. The two different routes that complaint can go is mediation or investigation. Not all cases are eligible for mediation, but those that are report a really high level of success. So that means that the police officer and the civilian that engage in this mediation, I'm sorry, let me take a step back. The satisfaction is based on the complainant's experience. So close to 90% of the complainants that go through mediation feel satisfied. They got their apology, they have a better understanding of what occurred. But if they're part of that 10%, they feel that the misconduct, that they weren't really heard, that they weren't satisfied with that process, it could go to investigations. But a couple of things to note about this mediation process: it's non-disciplinary, it doesn't appear on the police officer's disciplinary record, and it's completely confidential. But in the cases of that it is investigated, the things that are really important to note is that we have a really robust investigative process. This isn't like a Yelp review, right? It's not that I file a complaint and forget about it. It's a really serious matter. So we approach it very seriously. We interview all parties associated with this incident. That includes the member of service, which they're mandated to come and provide their side of the story. We have subpoena power, so we can subpoena video footage from outside of a local bodega that it occurred, or a school, or a subway station. We request body-worn camera footage, any health records or anything associated with that incident. We do a very good job of identifying the police officer that was involved. It's a really robust investigation to determine what exactly happened. And I'll end it on this note when it comes to the investigations. As I mentioned, a complaint doesn't equate guilt. So there are 4 possible outcomes of these investigations. We use a preponderance of evidence standard. So we can find at the conclusion of this investigation that it was substantiated. In other words, this misconduct was alleged and misconduct did occur. The police officer was not within the bounds of the patrol guide or went against the law in some way. We could find that it's unsubstantiated. We can't really say in good conscience that the incident occurred, the alleged misconduct occurred. It's not to say that misconduct didn't occur, but we didn't get that third eyewitness, or there was no video footage in that situation. So it's really unclear to us. It could be unfounded, that it reached the standard and the alleged misconduct did not occur. And finally, exonerated. We concluded this investigation. We interviewed both parties. We got the body-worn camera footage. All of this occurred, but it was within the patrol guide that stop was lawful, that I did match the description of the person that was potentially doing the alleged act, right? But it's important for us to note that these different situations and outcomes really give a more accurate picture of what police misconduct and allegations of police misconduct really means in New York. As I mentioned before, there are multiple ways of reporting misconduct. So folks can call 311. everyone's favorite number. They can call us directly at 1-800-341-CCRB or 2272. They can file a complaint online, nyc.gov/CCRB complaint. And also a recent development has been that folks, if they witnessed police misconduct on social media or in the news, they can file a complaint. This went into effect right before the protests over the summer. And we found that we got a flurry of complaints based on witness testimony, on misconduct that folks have witnessed via social media. So one of the figures was around 700 complaints related to 250 incidences. So it has really changed the landscape of our work and really changed our process. We're in a virtual age. Back in the day, we would go out to these community events. And it's not to say we haven't gone to a couple, but we have attended virtual, not only community boards, but after school programs. We're really happy to share this information and go a little bit more in depth in the process, answer any questions that folks might have. But also our board meetings, just like your community board meetings, are public. They occur the second Wednesday of every month. This month we met to discuss a rule change to include in our jurisdiction through abuse of authority, investigating allegations of police officers making false official statements, and also sexual misconduct alleged against police officers. You can also, I'll end on this little plug note. You can follow us on social media, on Twitter and Instagram. It's a way of getting up-to-date information on new press releases, news items related to the agency, upcoming meetings, etc. You all have my contact information. I'll be happy to answer any specific questions you might have, but I felt that this was a good general overview of where we are right now.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Oh, and I forgot to mention one more thing. On our website, we have a data transparency initiative. So what that means, I'll put it in the chat. It's pretty much a live complaint activity map. So you can hover over the precinct that you're in just to see the types of complaints that are in your precinct. And so I pulled that information for Community Board 4 for precincts 10 and 13. And again, these are complaints, so it doesn't, some are still under investigation, so I don't have ones are substantiated or exonerated, but I wanted to give you some numbers. So for the 10th precinct, we have a total of 19 complaints in 2020. What that means, but there are 8 allegations of force, 13 allegations of abuse of authority, 3 allegations of discourtesy, and 3 allegations of offensive language. So doing quick math, that's more than 19. So what that means is that in those 19 complaints, there are multiple allegations within that. For precinct 13, we had a total of 72 allegations of misconduct. With force, there were 47 allegations, abuse of authority 42, discourtesy 24, and offensive language 4. And I lied about that being my last thing. This is truly my last thing. In this work, we really encourage folks to apply to be an investigator. I know the city is in very fiscally precarious times, but it's really important work. And for those that are just graduating,
Yeah. Yahaira, you're getting, your voice is getting scrambled. You might want to sort of hold off for a bit.
Yeah.
We can't hear you very well. Maybe you want to turn your video off for a couple of seconds.
You're frozen at the moment, Yahaira. Well, I'm sure she'll be back in just a second. Yahaira, if you can hear us, it might help to turn off your video and just keep on your audio. All right, we will wait for a second and hope that,
Yeah, we just lost her.
yeah. I'm sure she'll be able to call back in. Well, lovely that we got that much information before we lost her, but I know we have lots of questions. I see some of the hands raised on
Yeah,
the
she's joining back, so hopefully.
good.
Katie, can I just quickly ask, will we have a copy of her presentation? I don't think I could find it like on the Dropbox anywhere.
We can request it.
Yeah, we
She's
can
back.
ask that.
Johanna, can you
Can we
hear us?
request it?
Yes, we can. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
All right, Yohira, can you try talking for a second and we'll see if we can hear you now?
Can you hear me
Perfect. Yeah.
now?
Yeah, you're still freezing. So what I'm going to recommend, Johanna,
Okay.
is if you can turn your video off and then we try, if you don't
Yeah.
mind. Yeah, now please talk.
Oh dear. All right, we have few little things to get adjusted here. But
Okay.
yeah, Sarah, that's a great idea. We'll definitely ask for a copy of that presentation as well. And then Jesse, that's the kind of thing that can also be posted on the website, right?
Yep.
Lovely. Yeah, because I think that was, very
Can
interesting.
you-
Hey, Katie.
Yeah.
Real quick, for those of you who live in Hell's Kitchen, the Midtown North Precinct Council meeting is beginning in 4 minutes. That's all.
Yeah, we know.
We know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an unfortunate
Conflict.
confluence of dates that we both have them at the same time.
Yohira, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Okay,
perfect.
perfect. I have my phone on standby in case this happens again, and I'll switch over.
Okay, but now you sound very clear. So
Okay,
even if I can't
perfect.
see you, you sound very clear. So Yohira, that was super helpful information that you just shared. And I don't know if you heard, but we're wondering if maybe you can send us your PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
That would be really great because that was very helpful. I think we have several members who have some questions. And actually, because I'm one of the co-chairs, I'm going to ask the first question, and then I promise we'll turn it over to the others. But I was just wondering, you shared with us some of the data, specific to 2 of the precincts in our district. But I was wondering, generally, do you have data that shows of the number of complaints that come in, say, for example, in 2020, how many were investigated? And then how they break down as to what the result was, were 13 positive or whatever, something.
Yes, that information is available. I can definitely pull it and email it. So there are 2 major sources of that. So there's the complaint activity map, which I have in the chat, but also we issue semi-annual and annual reports. Our semi-annual should be out soon. And then we have also monthly reports that we issue in our monthly board meetings to give a bird's eye view of some of the instances, some of the outcomes and the status of investigations.
And those reports, those monthly reports, would be available on your website or something?
Yep, and I will share that link as well.
Awesome, great. Okay. I'll confess I've lost track of whose hand went up first. Viren, were you paying attention?
A little bit. I think Dell was first. I'll go last. So I'm going to sort of wait for everyone else to ask questions. I think Dell's hand went up first.
Great.
Okay. Thank you so much, Yohira, for the information. It's super helpful. I have a couple of questions. One is general and one is kind of district specific. So I don't know if you're familiar with the recent op-ed that Scott Stringer published calling for reforms for the CCRB. So he asserts that it's basically—
It's 7 o'clock.
Oh, sorry, it's my clock just went off. It's basically the commissioner who oversees disciplinary recommendations. So you can investigate, but the disciplinary recommendations are in his hands. So, I mean, is that is that actually how it works? And also he pointed to some shortcomings in the investigatory process whereby police officers are basically resisting or slow walking, giving you guys the information that you request. Can you speak to those issues?
Those are great questions, Dale. So the first, when it comes to the police commissioner having final disciplinary authority, that's correct. And that is a state issue. It's coded in, I believe, Civil Service Law 75. Katie, I will send you the direct, the specific
Great.
law.
Oh,
And the response to that is, if the police commissioner has final disciplinary authority, what's the point? Our response is that there is a paper trail of that. So one of the things that we also track in our policy department are the times that we've recommended discipline and the police officer agrees with that discipline. It's called the concurrence rate. So for example, in the Eric Garner case, for the most egregious cases, it goes to trial through our administrative prosecution unit. So it's a team of attorneys. Because the police commissioner has final disciplinary authority, those trials do take place at One Police Plaza, but it's a deputy commissioner of trials that oversees it. In that case, the deputy commissioner of trials had a guilty verdict. The police commissioner agreed with that guilty verdict, and as a result, former officer Pantaleo was fired. In the instances where the police officer does not agree with our recommendations, in cases that don't necessarily rise to the occasion of a disciplinary hearing, because of the charter reform, the police commissioner now has to deviate from instances that they downgrade discipline in those cases. So that's another way of still having accountability and oversight given the restrictions that we have. In the second question about the access to information, I think you might be referring to body-worn camera footage. As I mentioned, it's a very important part of this process because it allows us to make determinations on the merits. So in those dispositions that I listed, substantiated, exonerated, unfounded, those are determinations based on the merits. So that means that we had, that body-worn camera footage or video to really help us know what went on. And with the influx of body-worn camera footage, it has caused, some delay in us receiving that information, and that is something that we're working actively with the department to get at. But as of now, it's a working relationship as opposed to us having direct access to that footage and information. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. So it sounds like I don't know if you would address this personally, but Controller Stringer is proposing that the commissioner do not have final disciplinary say in following your investigations. It sounds like you would be on board with a change that would take it out of the head of the department's hands.
So the board is something that has come up. What the board has publicly stated is that they are in favor of increasing that concurrence between the board's disposition and the police commissioner's issuing of discipline to the discipline that he mets out to the police officers. So that's where we are on that.
That's a current board position. Great. Thank you so much for that. And then the issue that I wanted to raise that's specific to our district is the August, I don't know what to call it, I guess a raid on a Black Lives Matter activist who lives in our district, Derek Ingram, who in August was besieged by excessive police presence, drones, dogs, battering rams in an effort to take him under arrest when they didn't have a warrant. So have you received complaints about that specific instance?
So although 50A was repealed, that shielded disciplinary records of police officers, Right now, it's currently, there's a temporary restraining order on us releasing information openly about some of the complaints that we've received. So I personally at this point can't confirm that we have that case, but that's kind of where we are with that. I can double check to see if our press department has made anything public, so I can follow with that. But in any case, if misconduct occurred.
So you're constrained by the TRO.
Currently, yes.
And does that have an expiration date?
So actually this morning, there were oral arguments were heard. And I think that we might know a little bit more in early February on where we are with that.
Okay, great. I'll leave it to others. Thank you so much for your answers.
No, thank you, Del. Those are great.
Thank you. I think the next person we have is Maria.
Hi.
Hi.
Haida. I have a couple of easy softball questions. 4 questions. The Right to Know Act that you mentioned, I'm just curious, how long has that been in effect? I don't know if anybody else knew. I didn't.
Yeah, it's been in effect since October of 2018. We took it upon ourselves to print some materials and like old school hand them out in different, we had a day of action, we posted on our website. We've taken it upon ourselves to share the information, but that's one of those things that's why these meetings are so important, that we really want to get the word out.
Okay, and another easy softball. Do all officers at this point wear body cam? So
It's those that are on patrol. I think they're expanding the program, but it should be that those that are interacting with civilians should have body-worn cameras on their person.
And the percentages, I think Katie was asking similar question, but percentages of each disposition for all the.
Yeah. So generally, I'll get you the exact numbers, but generally it's about 20% are substantiated, which means misconduct occurred.
Right.
Overall, it's about 10% of the police force have had a substantiated allegation of misconduct. So, again, it's one of those things, we're not here to, smear a police officer's name or anything like that, but it is important to know when police misconduct does occur for us to really just, hold those police officers accountable for them.
And then my question is, what's the percentage that are exonerated, that it was found to be false?
I will have to get that figure for you. I might be able to pull it from our. Yeah, I can get back to you on the most recent.
It sounds like you're pulling up something. I hear the clicking.
The clicking.
Yeah. And my other question is, what does it look like when someone complains about something they've observed on social media? Because I heard you mention when someone makes a complaint to the CRB, you need like the officers. I thought I heard you say you need the officer's information. Maybe you didn't say that, but I'm just curious what that looks like. If you see something on social media, how do I answer questions about where that officer comes from, what precinct, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a great question, Maria. So one of the things that we're actually really good at is identifying police officers. So we have access to their roll call, a photo array. What I like to say is leave that to us. So your standard should be pretty low. If you witness something, seen something, refer it to us and we'll do our best to get there. In the protest cases, we can analyze that footage to see if there's identifying if the shield number is there. The officers that were assigned to that specific area. and then providing a photo array to the complainant or the witness to identify that way. So a lot of different ways of getting there. Obviously, some situations are a little bit more complicated than others, but we really try our best to get there.
Thank you so much. Those were my questions.
No problem. Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Thank you, Maria. I think, see, next person is Mike Noble's hand.
Yeah, thanks. I'm here. You can't see me, but my name's there. I got a few questions for you, okay? And then one personal experience with the CCRB, all right? I'll try to be as quick as possible. Before the pandemic, there was all the talk at the CCRB about the lack of investigators and a backlog of investigations, all right? Tremendous backlog. On top of that, the police weren't cooperating. Since then, I think the police commissioner has forced the patrolmen and all to comply, right, to show up. Is the backlog still as bad as it was, say, 8 months ago?
That's a very great question. So that's another figure that I would have to follow back on. One thing that I can say is that the protest cases those are still ongoing. With the amount of footage and really trying to get some follow-up information on witnesses. And actually, back to Maria's point, sometimes identifying some of the officers, finding some issues with shield numbers. But with COVID, those numbers have waned a little bit, so they're not. It's a very specific situation that we're in, right? But you're right that historically that has been an issue. And one thing that happened with the charter reform is that our budgeted headcount has been tied to the headcount of NYPD. So that meant about 20 additional investigators. With that said, there was a caveat to that charter amendment being excluding any extraordinary financial circumstances, which we are in right now. We are lucky to still be hiring investigators, but really trying to match up with trying to get to the point where we're making really not only efficient investigations, but thorough.
Okay, one quick comment. I think the majority of your cases come out as unsubstantiated, right?
I believe so. That's like the last figure.
And the reason for that is that the bar is extremely high to provide the kind of evidence that you folks need to substantiate the complaint. All right. In my case, the one I want to tell you about involved a fellow named Michael Oliver. Do you remember that name? Do you remember the Sean Bell case? The fellow
Yes.
Sean Bell, Michael Oliver, the guy with the 3 clips unloaded into this guy, right? Well, a couple of years before that incident, he was out here in Chelsea. I observed him abusing someone, 2 guys, in fact, and made a complaint. All right. I saw this man acting as if it were steroid rage, and I complained and I said, this guy's going to hurt someone. I would never complain. This is beyond the pale. All right. So the 3 of us made separate complaints to IRB. Whatever the complaint word, you guys and to the police. Well, it came back unsubstantiated, even though our testimony was exactly the same. In terms of mediation, of course, he declined it. All the cops decline it because they can. They don't, for the most part, they don't accept mediation, right? Why should I, right? They know they're going to be exonerated somewhere down the line. Well, that was a case that was very disheartening to me. I was just the person in the general public who saw something that was horrendous. And look at this. This guy, Oliver, is now selling cars in New Jersey on a full pension, right? Shouldn't have happened. And I wonder if it would happen today under the new reformed CCRB. I sure hope it would not happen again. This is an extraordinary case. And when his trial was happening, and all the rest of those cops, I was urged to go forward with this experience, and I didn't do it. And I said, no, they're going to convict all these guys, and they didn't. They didn't. So anyway, that's my personal experience. It happened right here in Chelsea. So what can I tell you? But you know the name. Does that case ever come up at the CCRB?
Well, first and foremost, Mike, this is why these meetings are so important, is that this is a civic duty, right? This is a civic act of not only reporting, but even knowing that this resource exists, but also holding us accountable to make sure that it's a resource that serves New Yorkers. And I would like to say that, you know, since 2006, we have made. I would hope that something like body-worn camera footage would have helped in a situation like that, right? It's a relatively, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I started. Sorry, so you can't hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Yes, Yohaira, but there is
okay. What was the last part that you heard?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that good?
Yeah. Great. Perfect.
Okay. What was the last part that you heard?
That since 2006, you're doing something else.
Or that the body cam should help, and that shouldn't be happened before.
Yeah, I would hope that that is something that, you know, I know that that's having things being concluded on the merits of having that additional information. But again, I hope that we get there, right?
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Mike. We have three more hands up. First, Hector, Kit, and then Leslie. Hector, you go
Hi,
first.
Yohaira. Yohaira, are you on? I'm sorry, we were cutting in and out before. I'm just checking. Hello?
Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Question. Since we were on the issue of body cams, what is the CCRB doing about some of the video footage? There was a report done on New York One recently, dated January 19th of this year, where a professor from John Jay College testified and stated to the effect that about 43% of the video footage submitted by police officers are being redacted, meaning that it's just missing or corrupted, or whatever the reason is, it's not visible and presentable for the investigations that are being put forth by the CCRB. What are you folks doing? I mean, what is in the purview of the CCRB to possibly combat that or resolve it somehow? Because honestly, that seems like a large percentage of video footage that may show a different light on what's happening out there in the street when there's an interaction with an officer and an individual there.
Yeah, that's a great question, Hector. So it's complicated. Where we are now is having a working relationship with NYPD to receive this body-worn camera footage and other materials that are relevant to the case. What has been discussed in larger circles, and I think they're talking with the John Jay study, is that there are other departments that have direct and unfettered access to body-worn camera footage, and how helpful that could be to getting that information. So it's something that, you know, the board has been in conversation with, and in the meantime, really trying to strengthen that access and shortening that time of us getting those requests of body-worn camera footage related to CCRB complaints.
Okay. That's great. Thank you very much for answering that. And I realize that the report just came out, so I know CCRB needs time to try to address the issue. So I'm not going to slam you on that, obviously, because it's kind of out of your hands at this point, but I know you're working on it. My second and final question is, on the policeman patrol guide, I noticed that certain sections are updated. You know, I don't know, the inconsistency of updates seems to be like every couple of years. And I know there was like 4 or 5 updates done recently, but only in 2020. With all that's been happening in the streets these days in New York City and in New York abroad, I would think that there would be a lot more updates coming, and I hope that's the case here. How would the CCRB weigh in on something like that?
Updates on what was that?
Yohaira, did we lose you?
I'm gonna try connecting on my phone.
Okay.
Hector, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me? Hello, Yohaira? Oh, I guess we're still having problems.
Yeah, I think I got most of your question. You said updates on. Hello?
On the police patrolman's guide? The one
Oh,
that you had
yes.
mentioned earlier?
So
Yeah. I mean, basically, I reviewed the latest one, and it seemed like there was only maybe four updates in all for 2020, I believe. And we're talking about pages and pages of guidelines for policemen. So I'm just wondering, with all the turmoil we've been having in the streets in the past year and a half and then some, I would expect that there would be more updates because obviously a lot needs to be changed. Yohaira? Okay.
yeah, PD's process of updating the patrol guide. So what we're responsible for is, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Oh, no, I lost you again. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, Yohaira. I hope we can get it. Yeah. Wow. Just our luck, huh? A lot of good information here, though. I just hope we can get a hold of her here.
That, yeah, were there updates? Oh no, happening. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
So, you can hear me now?
No, Yohaira, unfortunately, you're very in and out. So we're not getting a consistent signal from you. So
That's awful.
Yeah. Kit, I would suggest that maybe you put your question in the chat right now. Yohaira, can you even see the chat?
I can hear you perfectly and I can see the chat.
Marvelous. Okay. Then I wonder if that might be the best way for us to finish this topic is maybe if both Kit and Leslie can put their questions in the chat and you can respond that way right now.
Okay.
I mean, frankly, suddenly you actually sound much clearer, but I just don't know how long I have you for.
Okay, I like switched to my phone and now I'm like inches away from my Wi-Fi.
Okay, well, you know, that then sounds like it's working just fine. So,
okay.
All right.
All right, we'll try and keep you on as long as we can. Okay, over to you, Viren.
Kit, I think why don't you try asking the question first and see what happens?
All right, I'll give it a whirl. So CCRB is collecting all sorts of really important data on types of misconduct reported, trends on where these issues are being reported. I was just curious, two things. One, how does NYPD use that data? And two, if CCRB had its way, how would NYPD be using that data?
That's a great question. I can't really speak to how NYPD uses that data. How our team uses that data is twofold. So we look at high complaint areas. So the highest complaint areas historically have been in the 75th and 73rd precincts. So that's East New York, Brownsville. And so what we do is, we make sure to provide resources in those communities and let folks know the process. But also we use some NYPD data and find any lapses in complaints, just to make sure, our goal is to have every New Yorker know who we are and what we do and how to file a complaint if they witness something. And so we go out to different neighborhoods and think of different ways of sharing that information. I know that our complaint data for other agencies has been used in order to target some reform efforts to make sure that those that are impacted by police misconduct are being prioritized in discussions, I believe, even in the Executive Order 203 process. But that's the last I've heard with how that information is used. And, ideally, we get to the point where, this information is useful for folks, but nobody's goal is to have more reports of misconduct, right? It's to really try to address these issues in a structural way, which is a little bit outside of our lane. But what we can do is just share this information as widely as possible.
Yeah, no, very helpful, and I appreciate that. It's a bit concerning, more than a bit, that there's no sense of how the NYPD uses this data at all. I know that's not something that's within your locus of control, but in terms of both training and management, as a citizen, I would hope that my police force was looking at this data and using it to drive how they're running their agency. So thank you for answering the question.
Well, Kit, actually, I did want to add one thing, which I forgot about. So again, kind of outside of our lane, but Councilmember Vanessa Gibson in the Bronx sponsored a bill on an early intervention system with police officers, and it uses a variety of factors, but one of them is CCRB complaints against a police officer, and triggering an early intervention for those that are a little higher risk of misconduct. And I can't really speak to the specifics of the bill. I don't have it in front of me, but that concern is actually has been addressed. And I believe that law went into effect, what is time, but definitely in 2020 with a package of bills. So we'll see where that goes soon.
Interesting.
Thank you, Kate. Leslie.
Yes, I have a quick question. It has to do with the NYPD's 34-point policy for review that was put out. And I was wondering what the CCRB's concerns are regarding the handshoe agreement and how those 34 proposals may be impacted by that.
And Leslie, apologies. The 34 proposals, was that the disciplinary matrix or the reform process?
The reform process. I just read, it was 34 items of policy issues, such as looking at the eyes, the iris, to copy the iris, drones, x-rays of vehicles, etc.
Oh, great. Great point, Leslie. Actually, I just stumbled upon it today. You might be talking about the Post Act and talking about the surveillance technologies that police officers are using.
Yes.
So on the website, which I think I can share in the chat. They just posted their current policies on their use of audio recording devices, facial recognition, even body-worn camera footage, their policy possible impacts on civilians. And I believe, I feel out of bounds speaking on behalf of the department. I was literally just reading it before I hopped on this call. I believe there's a public comment period that's open until February.
Yes.
So that's something that you might want to review and maybe provide any input on. I'll put it in the chat.
Is there anything in particular that the CCRB sees to be concerning or troubling that sticks out?
Great question. That's literally why I was looking at it and sharing it with folks. Like, hey, we should review this and see if we have any thoughts on that. So TBD.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Leslie. That was a good one. And Hector, if you can still hear me, the patrol guide, that is a very fair point. I can't speak to the NYPD's process. But if it's in the patrol guide, it's within our bounds, and if it falls under our jurisdiction. So it is something that we're constantly looking into, but I guess the point you were getting at is, that it should be updated more frequently. That's something that is better addressed through, the department and elected officials on that stuff, on that front.
Thank you. Thank you, Kit. Sarah, you have your hand up.
Yes, just a quick follow-up to Leslie's question. Is the CCRB planning on making a public comment or a statement about some of the department's surveillance policies that we should look out for?
As of now, I literally just saw that it went live a couple of days ago, and just minutes old. So it's TBD on that. What I can say is that during the public hearing that the City Council's Public Safety oversight of Executive Order 203, our chair did provide testimony on some recommendations they have for reimagining civilian oversight. We also shared some recommendations that youth had in relation to NYPD engagement. I know that doesn't touch on surveillance technology, but it is some recent conversations that the board has been having. And I'll share that as well.
That would be great. But just in general, for our own edification, does the board tend to comment on NYPD policy? Or is that not something we should even expect?
So that's something for example, with the Disciplinary Matrix, they held a public comment portion. So we dedicated a board meeting to that. We called on a variety of advocates from, NICLU to Center for Constitutional Rights to review the Disciplinary Matrix, provide us with insight as well on some recommendations that we might have for it. So we'll be actually holding a follow-up meeting on January 29th at noon to discuss the Disciplinary Matrix even further. So to answer your question, it's not outside of our realm of possibility to respond to things like that. We just try to keep it specific to our jurisdiction. And I saw body-worn camera footage on that list, so I imagine that it could fall under our lane and purview.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Sarah. Just for everyone to know that next month we will have someone from NYPD coming and speaking to us about the use of surveillance technology. And one other quick note, Brennan Center for Justice actually has published on their website the sort of what is publicly available information about surveillance technology use in New York City. With that, I'm going to go to Josephine.
Hi, I had to step away for a minute, so I'm really sorry if somebody asked this already, but what privacy or protections are there for people who actually make complaints? Because I know sometimes people have a serious issue, but they don't want to say anything because they're afraid of retribution or being tracked down somehow.
Yeah, that is a very great question, and no one has asked that. So it's something that we take very seriously. It's fear of retaliation. And that is something that in the public testimony that the chair provided, I believe it was last week, talked about that, ensuring that that civilians that file complaints don't face retaliation. And it's something that, you know, because it isn't an anonymous process, we really have to ensure that civilians feel safe in engaging in this process. So it's definitely something that we take very seriously. So any allegations of retaliation is also something that is brought, you know, straight to those that can follow up on those allegations.
But I guess at some point, if somebody makes an allegation, they may be called in as a witness or something, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, but their privacy will still be protected.
So, so I can't anonymously file a complaint against a police officer. So what that means is, you know, I would have to get the police officer's side of the story. So it wouldn't be, they would have to know, you know, the time and the location of the incident, describe, you know, who was there. If it gets to the stage of, you know, we substantiate it with charges and specifications, which means the most egregious, AKA the Administrative Prosecution Unit, we would want to call that witness to the trial and share their perspective. But again, if there's any allegation of a police officer, you know, going to a person's house unannounced, anything like that, that's something that's very serious. And because of, you know, the board and the relationship that we have with the department and elected officials, it's something that we can address if that does come to our table.
Okay, because I believe with the Eric Gardner case, the person who actually videotaped it, there's just a spiral after that of events that happened to him. And, you know, he apparently was already sort of, you know, involved in the legal system before that. But the point is that whole video was something completely separate. And you know, his life was basically destroyed for a long time. I don't even know what's happening with him now. But that's the big concern with people, that nobody wants to go through that.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And the person that filed that complaint, I believe, was a witness to that incident, but not the person that you're speaking of.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Josephine. I think Mike has a follow-up question. Mike Noble.
Yeah, I forgot to bring this. I put it in the chat. It's the business about the matrix. That matrix, first of all, is it something that, I know you guys looked at it because I was at the meeting when you did. The question is whether your recommendations are based on that. Is there any interplay with it? Understanding that the matrix only is sort of a guideline for the ultimate determination by the police commissioner. I mean, what is the overall thought at CCRB now as to the final product that's come out?
Mike.
Yes.
You're the best.
Well,
first of all, you're
know,
so engaged. That's amazing.
Thank
so
you.
thank you for attending that meeting. And that's what the special meeting on January 29th will be all about, is following up on what that means for the agency. There will be discussion on, you know, the impact of it and how that will relate to our work and the board's disciplinary recommendations. And hoping to get to, you know, closer concurrence with our recommendations and the police commissioners. But, you know, it was issued on Friday, and our team is looking at it now.
But everybody should know that they can sign into these, they can register for these meetings every month, and they're helpful. I mean, they're good. And I don't see anybody else from my board there, you know, lately. But I recommend it to everyone.
That's great. And as I'm like working on my phone, I'm going to send in obviously my contact information. So I hope that this is also another open line, like any questions that you might have, like that's what we're here for. We're here to serve you. And also there's an email list of not only the upcoming meetings, but any other events or updates that we might have. So I'll put that in there as well.
Thank you, Ira. Chris.
Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate the presentation. I just want to piggyback on what Josephine brought up and provide context. In my past life, I was the legislative and communications and budget fellow for the Black Latino Agent Caucus of the City Council, and we were intimately involved in protests over at One Police Plaza in 2019 that helped to push for the firing of former officer Pantaleo. Josephine brought up the point about whether or not we're tracking individuals who are who could potentially harass people who are making complaints to CCRB, and I want to tie that into civilian or police surveillance and digital surveillance of civilians. Are there any programs currently in place or being built out or in trial run to ensure that officers who have long records of thick files of complaints within the CCRB, that they're being tracked to make sure that they're not going over to civilians' homes or places of work for harassment?
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions in there that I see. So internally, we have records of police officer misconduct. So we have our internal database of, the complaints that have been filed, and, that does inform, additional complaints that might be lodged against a police officer. For example, if, we see a pattern of repeat allegations of misconduct. When it comes to retaliation, historically, allegations of retaliation has been low, but we want that to be zero. So that's why these conversations are so important, to ensure that when the city engages in conversations about reimagining policing, it includes that civilians feel safe in that process. So
right. Reports are low historically because people are afraid, correct? Because there's no stopgap right now to prevent that on a digital end. The same way we require these safety cameras to be on when an officer is engaging in a public situation, shouldn't an officer who has a complaint active issued to the CCRB, shouldn't their location and their actions be made aware the entire time?
And sorry, by the entire time,
as it's relevant to the individual who made the complaint against them. Like there's no stopgap. There's no safety valve to stop harassment. The individual that Josephine had brought up is in jail right now and had been consistently harassed and arrested multiple times because he had filmed and put this video on of Eric Garner choking and dying onto social media. So what's this? What program would the CCRB be implementing, or can the CCRB implement, to ensure that officers or fellow officers aren't actively involved in harassment? Because when someone is harassed by the police department, their instinct may not be the first instinct that this individual had, which was to go to New York Post and say, or the Daily News and say, they're following me, they're harassing me, they're stopping me from having a free and liberty-filled life. There's nothing in the middle right now, and that's what I'm curious about. I know that the NYPD is using digital tactics to follow New Yorkers. What are you doing as a CCRB to ensure that harassment from the NYPD is curtailed through similar technology?
So
while there's no reform yet.
Yeah, that's fair. What we can only speak to are the complaints that are filed with us. So that's another element of our process, is that we can't initiate our own investigation. It has to come from someone else, right? So we can speak to a person filing a CCRB complaint, and as a result of them filing a CCRB complaint, there being retaliation. And that, I think you bring up a fair point of what are the systems in place to ensure that they are safe throughout that process, right? And safeguards in place in case that trust is breached. When it comes to the larger conversation on surveillance, and that is something that's a little bigger than us, but I think a fair point, and I think the time to have the conversation as a city, I think, is now.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, I think that brings us to a sort of conclusion of the Q&As. I actually had a question, but Kit already sort of took care of it, so I'm not going to ask again. Any other questions before we say thank you? Yohaira, thank you very much for generously giving us quite a lot of time, actually. We didn't realize that this would go on for about 45 minutes after your presentation, but it did. And so thank you so much for it.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, that echoes that this task force is really dedicated to this work. And I really hope that to continue this relationship and conversation. So I left my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out. And I look forward to continuing working with all of you.
Great.
Yohaira, I'm sorry. I know I was trying to get on here. As far as you have the Youth Advisory Council that's supposed to be a part of the CCRB, can you elaborate about what that's really about? I mean, what's involved with that? Because I was in a previous meeting, like, I don't know, last year sometime, and you folks had mentioned it before about getting it going, and I guess you have it out and it's already up and operating. What is the what's the deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we started it in 2019. So we realized that youth weren't filing complaints and didn't know about the CCRB. So we started a youth advisory council to advise the agency on how to better engage youth and how to get that message across. And so the first year we held a youth summit, 250 youth were there, NYPD was there listening directly to youth. It was a youth-led event on their interactions with policing in and around schools, stop and frisk, all of that. Last year, the Youth Advisory Council had a PSA, which I'll drop in the chat, to share information about the process. The Youth Advisory Council also met with Deputy Commissioner Chauncey Parker, Chief Jeff Madry, Deputy Commissioner Kevin O'Connor, who leads the Youth Coordinating Officer Division, where they held a conversation directly about what their concerns are. So for this class, we're going through applications now. We've had a really great number from Manhattan. And we're finalizing that cohort within the next few weeks. And this year's goal, we'll be collectively talking to them about what they would like to work on in order to really not only, increase the awareness of CCRB, but improve relations between youth and CCRB and youth and NYPD.
That's great. How would I get more information about that? Because I'm trying to coordinate something similar to that here in the community.
Oh, that's great. Hit me up, Hector. There's nothing that I love talking about. There's nothing more than I love talking about than youth. And I'll be happy to share the structure of the workshop. I'll share the general link of some of the stuff that they worked on and the outline of the youth summit. But yeah, application process, happy to discuss.
Great. And I'm sorry, I didn't see your email. I guess it's somewhere in the chat, or are you going to send it to Jesse? Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah.
I'll look for it there. Okay. Thank you, Yohaira. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, Hector.
Well, what a wealth of information you've shared with us, Yohaira. So thank you a million times over. It really has been awesome. So yeah, bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah. And we're very sorry that we've had some connection difficulties, but it all worked out. So well done.
No, apologies on my end. Sorry about that.
None necessary. All right, Viren, I think you had posted the agenda earlier for our next topics.
Yes, I'm just going to share screen again so everyone can see. This is where we are.
Marvelous. I know that our next topic, I think it was Rose who had raised it at the last meeting.
Yes, Rose and Josephine.
Yeah. I think it's such a great idea. I know, unfortunately, Rose was unable to join us this evening. I don't know if anybody else has any suggestions or thoughts about how we could go about this. Josephine, I don't know if you have any thoughts more about this. One of the things that we had discussed was whether or not, obviously we've been having some updates at our full board meetings just about COVID testing and then the vaccine. So this could be a discussion we try and raise an ask to be addressed at the next full board meeting? Or do we want to do something separate? I know there had been a suggestion last month, and I apologize, I don't recall who made it, but about maybe partnering with some other organization to try and have a more in-depth discussion about this topic.
All I can say is that, if we're going to do that kind of outreach, it has to be, I mean, at least for me, it feels like it has to come from an organic place. And sometimes it feels like, reaching out to these communities and saying, come on as a public member. I don't know. There's something that, kind of bothers me about it, to be quite honest with you, because it seems like we're sort of doing it after the fact. We're doing it to make our diversity numbers look good. And I know that that's not the case, but that's what it may appear like. So
wait, are we talking about number 2 or number 3 right now?
We are talking about number 3.
Okay, I was talking about number 2. Sorry.
Okay, but I think they're kind of related in some ways, because
you're saying like if we ask
well, I'm just saying that the history of this board has not been diverse at all, right? We don't have many Black members on the board. We certainly don't have much in terms of Black or Latino leadership on the board. So I feel that people in the community actually see that. So, for us now to go out there, it has to be done in an organic way. And, Rose and I have had a couple of conversations about it, and we haven't really decided, what would be the most effective way of doing this. But obviously we do need to diversify this board. I mean, I agree to that. It would just, if anybody has any strategies that they'd like to share, then, please do.
Well, can I mention something?
Yes.
Okay. Earlier this morning, Gail Brewer's office and I spoke with, I guess her team, Rose Mendez and April Adams, and Jesse was on the call. And we were talking about item number 3, and they shared with me how they go about, from their perspective, in sourcing individuals to come onto the board, and what they could do to help us in doing that. And so they shared a whole host of things, so I'm not going to enumerate all together here. But we also talked about, and we talked about full-time board members, not just people who would come in afterwards. We talked about full-time board members. The 2 areas on the board that seems to be deficient in terms of representation certainly is the Latinx group, and also younger people, meaning 17 to 20. That group seems to be, a deficient area. We seem to meet all the other needs in terms of the statistical numbers, which she's going to share with me later. So I'll send that out to other people as well. And women is another issue as well in terms of the numbers, as Dale points out. But we also talked about using the schools in the area. For example, John Jay, reaching out to John Jay. There's students there. There are professors, there's administrative staff. We talked about FIT and maybe reaching out to them. We talked about the different theater groups, unions, 1199, anything of any location in the neighborhood that could help us get people onto the board of all sorts.
I think Leslie makes a great point. I'll just give you one quick example. I think Josephine is also right. Some of this is going to, if we look for institutional ways of doing an outreach, it's going to happen in a particular way. But one quick example I'll give you. My students did a project in Harlem, and some of them actually, I encouraged them to actually attend community board meetings, and they brought back stuff that they would not have thought about earlier. And now I just yesterday I heard 3 of my students actually joined Community Board 9 and Community Board 10. So I think, the word of mouth and sort of encouraging students in high schools and other places where we might have some way of interacting would be good. But I think at the same time, suggesting to CB4 to think about some outreach program of that nature within the, for the schools in the community, I think is a great way to sort of get young folks roped in.
And Josephine, I agree with you. I think Josephine, you're correct in that it should happen organically. Now, I worked for CUNY, so I do have contacts at certain locations where I can reach out to, and they would know me one-on-one. And you can get a better impact if someone knows you, you represent the board, and you know their organization. I also worked for 1199. So there are contacts there that I could reach out to, and you probably have dozens of others.
Right.
So I'm going to chime in because for the last 4 years, I just turned 36, which means I aged out of the Manhattan Young Democrats this past summer. And I've been on the board of that group for 3 years prior to. And Leslie's right. The borough president does her damnedest to make sure that all boards in Manhattan are as diverse as possible, or at least that they're reflective of the community, the people who live and work there. I think Manhattan's unique in that sense, especially when we look at Brooklyn and Queens and Staten Island and the Bronx. They're certainly deficient in terms of representation for minorities or just in generality, just are not reflective. And I think that's in large part due to the council members that select those members. But then also it also is rooted in the lack of civic engagement for either people who are transient, and that's to say they're lease their year to year on their leases. As it relates to Manhattan though, with MYD, we had an annual program where we were actively seeking people to either join public as a public member or a full board member. And we've seen about 2 to 3 of our members matriculate on borough-wide. Second project that we've been doing, that I've been doing, was with High School for Environmental Studies. There's a teacher, she does News Hour Extra. Her name is Sari Beth Rose, and she's in charge of civics and a group called the Lady Eagles. The Lady Eagles and the Civics Club has actively been pushing those students, the majority of which live up in Inwood and in Queens and Brooklyn, to begin participating. That's been incredibly successful there. And then with the Hell's Kitchen Democrats, I was on the board for 2 years straight, and we tapped into there. We were utilizing their communications route to make sure that people knew that there were deadlines on there. One of the things that we could possibly do, to Leslie's point, is maybe do a little bit more activity within NYCHA itself. I know we have only a couple members, but when I first joined 5 years ago, there was only one member of the board who was living in the campus over there. So there needs to be something vastly more robust done in that particular area. I myself at one point was the only Latin member of the board, probably for a good 10 months, which speaks volumes. So certainly there's a loneliness there. And also in our senior leadership, our co-chairs and our board overarching, it wasn't until Maria Ortiz joined on that there was a Latin member of the board there.
I was going to say, what about me? Do I?
Don't worry, Maria. We didn't forget.
I said 10 months because then you jumped on. I think we had a small overlap where you weren't on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's certainly a deficiency in leadership. There's a deficiency in identity. But one of the things that we can do and have been doing, I'm definitely more than happy and willing and have the time right now to do it, is build out a program that identifies civic-based groups within our community, like the unions and like the tenant association boards, to get more applications in. Also, it's January 19th. I believe applications are due February 1.
No, I think it's a little bit later in February, but I'll double check.
It's pushed? Okay. I mean, look, I understand that being on the board requires a lot of time, but we should be putting a lot more hours in to make sure that more applications are coming in to Manhattan Community Board 4 and have that be the most demanded seat. I don't mind losing this seat to anybody because I don't own it. If somebody's far more talented than me and has the time, like if that's who I lose a seat to, then I lose that seat to, and our community is all better for it.
Well, and Chris, I think your offer of putting together a list of civic-minded organizations that then we could, just send a notice to, right? An email, or just say this is who we are. We'd really love to get more applications. This is what the deadline is. And again, one of the things we talked about before is we think Gail Brewer's office is doing an awesome job, right? Reaching out to people and trying to focus and make sure that we are as diverse as possible, but we think that we have our own responsibility for doing our own outreach, right? Like there's no reason why we shouldn't also be helping. And as you all have just talked about, like there are definitely certain areas where we could certainly be more diverse and, be more inclusive. And that's what we're trying to focus on. Is we're not saying that anybody's done a bad job anywhere. We're just trying to make it even more inclusive and thinking about ways that we on this task force in the next couple of weeks, what steps we can take to try and encourage more applications.
I mean, I just want to make 2 points. One of the points is that we take our data in terms of demographics from the census. Is that correct?
Yes.
And we know that a lot of Black and Latino families do not fill out the census. I had an event at Fulton Houses over the summer. It was a schools event. I believe Hector was at the one at Chelsea Elliott. I don't know if he was one at the Fulton, but while I was there, I was talking about the census and how important it was for people to fill out the census. And I actually had people say to me, why would we do that? The government is never here for us. And they went on about it, and people are not filling out this form. So I know that our numbers are underrated here. They are lower than what they actually are. And I've tried to convince people. So I like Chris's idea that we're actually it's going to have to be a lot more than just sending an email. There's a lot of mistrust in the community about the government, and that relates to COVID and these vaccinations. So it really is going to take a lot more than the emails, because in order to break into this community, we're going to have to build trust, and that's not here right now. And a lot of people feel that, oh, well, if I send in an application, I get on the board, no one's going to listen to me anyway. Or the board is all about connections, because a lot of it is about connections, right? About who you know. That's how people get on the board. And so a lot of people may feel like, this is not, why bother? So I just feel like I have to be very truthful, very honest about that. This is what this working group is here. This is why we're here.
Exactly.
So we need to be intentional about it, but we also need to be very sincere about this kind of work. But I'm more than happy to, do part of that work as well in NYCHA and Fulton House, especially because of all of this, the conversion of the buildings and all of that, that their voices really need to be at the table. And I was I have to say, disheartened when Elzora resigned from the working group, because it's people like that you really need on the working group. I'm very happy that Hector is still there, but to lose that voice was quite shocking to me, frankly. And I haven't been able to have a conversation with her about it, but those are the kind of things that we need to, when something like that happens, we actually need to reach out to that person and figure out what happened, what went wrong, because those are the voices that we need to hear from. And if our own board members are stepping off of committees for whatever reasons, we need to have those discussions.
Right. And to be fair, things can come up in people's personal lives. And as Dale mentioned also in the chat,
Right, but we don't know that.
Very time consuming.
Right, we don't know that. And what I don't want to do, because I've heard this before, that people say that, I want to let them tell me that they don't have the time to do it. I don't want to be the one who say, well, it's a lot of time commitment. They may have to have the time.
Of course. No, that's what we're talking about, is that we want to be able to reach out.
Exactly. So I think they could figure that out for themselves, was what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, I think the question is that if they don't come to our task force, we don't have the mechanism in place to sort of, unless I didn't even know that Elzora, for example, resigned. I didn't know that up until now. And that's my bad, because I haven't been sort of keeping up with the work of the task force as much as I should. But I think the big point that you made just now, I think is extremely important, NYCHA particularly. It's not just about them not filling out the census forms, but NYCHA, population data is also underreported, because many people do not actually inform, even NYCHA, how many folks live in an apartment actually. There's quite a bit of doubling up, and because of the fear of being reprimanded, many folks don't come forward. Because if you have a 2-bedroom apartment, there's only one family and 4 people, but you might actually end up finding many more folks there. So, that's an important issue as well, because So we look at NYCHA numbers across the city as 400,000 folks, but the unofficial number is much higher. And we don't know about it, and we don't account for it. So, and the other point that I'm going to sort of acknowledge here is that maybe there's a way to engage NYCHA populations by reaching out to the community centers that that we have on many of these NYCHA developments, and maybe post information about our meetings and membership drive through CB4. And Jesse would be the person we should reach out to about this as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Maria, I think I see your hand up, but I also first, before you speak, I just want to actually give you a shout out, because you mentioned to me the other night that you've actually reached out to somebody individually to encourage them to, to think about applying. And I think that's one of the things, and this goes to your point too, Josephine, right? Like, it's the individual reach out. I mean, we have to think about how we can do more, reaching out to groups, but we also really have to do individual reach out. And so Maria, like, huge shout out to you for already having started that. Okay, then what was your question?
No, it actually wasn't a question. I was just gonna go along those lines and just say, which I'm sure we've already thought of, but I just want to put it out there anyway, throw it on the table, is that thinking about, I think one of the most effective ways is to really just reach out to our own network and people that we have in our own circle to try to get them on the board. Thinking about our own networks, if we're trying to think of, let's say, trying to get more people of color on the board. And so there's this like one young lady that I've tried to get for a couple of years. She's young and person of color, lived in this community a long time. She still hasn't joined, but and then someone else recently, she was going to join in her own community and neighborhood. But I was like, well, you work in this neighborhood, and I think you have an expertise that we actually lack in this on this board. So maybe you should join. It's a woman, so that's great. Not a person of color, but whatever. I think also like reaching out, and so I think you guys were already talking about this. I zoned out for a little bit, but thinking about the schools. When I was the PTA co-president, I had Dolores was the chair of CB4, and I had her come in and speak to the group. I also had Matt Green come and speak, and I think it's really helpful. The other thing I was thinking about is like our the relationships that the CB4 has with like Metro Baptist Church, with, I can't think of the other church right now that's in Chelsea. I think it's, I can't remember it, but I think thinking about faith-based groups, I'm thinking about the Hudson Guild and other specific organizations that we can reach out to. People don't have to live in this community to be on this board. They can work in the community. And I think if we need a specific kind of expertise, like we can reach out to those organizations, right? So
yeah,
that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, great idea. Kit, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So a couple things I was planning to share have been said, but I just want to reemphasize, I think tapping into our own networks is the biggest opportunity here. Any job, whether it's paid, volunteer, the biggest source of sort of successfully identifying folks who are the right fit is always through your personal network. And, not all of us are as networked as Chris, or at least I'm not. But I think if we are each committed to thinking about who are the people that we know that have a perspective that currently the board isn't hearing enough of, and that can be a combination of their identity and their lived experience, we can move the needle on this. The other point I wanted to make, Dale called out in the chat, I think we should be thinking now about this as like a long-term push. And in preparation for not that many years, the moment when term limits are no longer sort of constraining the amount of new members that we can add to the board. I want to see us thinking about full members and public members. But the more folks we can cultivate in the next 5 years, the more successful we are going to be increasing diversity when there are many more seats open. And so the more we push now, the more successful we can be in the long run in this area. And the last thing I wanted to bring up was it's curious to me that we are sort of living in this moment of youth activism that is taking off across many different issue areas in our city and around the country. And yet we have a deficiency of having not enough youth on our board. I don't think that's because any of us have necessarily done anything wrong. But one of the byproducts of there being so much youth involvement in politics and society today is there are more groups, I think, probably than ever before that are helping to organize young people. And so I wonder how we tap into those organizations, those networks, those folks more than we historically have, because it would be wonderful to have current high school students, current college students, and make sure that those voices are getting represented. I think they would bring a really valuable lens to a lot of the issues that we're talking about.
Great, thanks. Hector, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I'm kind of surprised to hear about Ozora as well. I mean, we're near the end of the proposal preparedness, and hopefully we'll have it done by the end of this month and it'll be submitted finally. So it's a loss, and yeah, I'm sorry to see that Ozora is no longer part of the group. I think as far as reaching out to the community here, yeah, as I believe it was Josephine that hit on it, there's a sense of mistrust when it comes to any kind of political body, unfortunately. So I think, and we are actually hitting that wall when it comes to this work group, and we've been hitting it almost every day throughout the process. So you know, the way we've been trying to overcome that is basically more inclusiveness, more transparency, and like somebody had mentioned before, we need to get the word out as to what is the community board 4 is all about, and what they, how it can impact the community to make it better. I don't think the majority of the people don't even know that they can join, or even if they work in the community, they can join. So I think it's just a matter of publicity, the right kind, to get the word out somehow. And it's a little difficult in this time of COVID, obviously, but maybe with the right kind of advertising, like flyers being posted up, I know we can try to get some postings up in the buildings at LA Chelsea and Fulton, which is, a massive community. We might be able to get some talent out of there. And I can try to get a hold of the Hudson Guild, Jacob Jockers, and see if, he can help out with getting the word out as well. So, but I think we just need a general flyer or something promoting the elections for Community Board 4, and maybe we can get the right kind of pool, the right kind of balance that we need.
Okay, well, we can definitely make sure that we see if any flyers have been prepared, or if not, but we can make sure that one is prepared and then circulate that to everybody in our group, right? And if maybe we can all, to the earlier points, we can all make sure that we reach out to, pick a number. We all commit to reaching out to at least 3 people in our network for right now for this application process, right? To encourage them. And yeah, and Kit, to your point, and we also really think about how we can do this over the long haul to make sure that in the next 5 years, we can really be more thoughtful and more organized and committed to making this even more inclusive. Dale, you had a hand up?
Yes. Wait, can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all for this discussion. I just want to bring up a couple of points that were raised. First of all, when Josephine mentioned the data, the stats as defining whether we are representational or not, I think that's a really solid point, especially when you factor in undercounting and also people who may not necessarily live in our district and have a physical address in our district, but work and participate in other ways in our district. They are eligible to be board members. Second, I brought up the issue of how board membership is volunteer labor, mainly because I think it's good to think about proactive ways that we could support people who may say things like, I would love to do this and I am engaged on certain issues, but I have childcare challenges, or I just can't get away for a couple of hours, or I don't have a quiet room to sit in for a couple of hours and be on a Zoom. So I was thinking like we could develop some resources to support possible potential eligible candidates.
I will babysit, Dale.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
You can bring your baby, I babysit.
Right. And then the third one is when Kit said activists, like youth activism, right? I just want to point something out, which is all of you probably realize by now that I have very strong feelings about the NYPD and think that, especially after what happened yesterday on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I think that they need major reforms, and most of the city apparatus, including the young woman who was very earnest that we heard from at the CCRB, all of the mechanisms are in place to avoid accountability on the part of the police. So I think I've made myself pretty well known on this, and I have been confronted by leadership at CB4 to the effect of like, maybe if you want to be an activist, you shouldn't be on Community Board 4, as if the two things are mutually exclusive. So there, I would say that there is a kind of general, like there's a way of thinking about the community board that a lot of the, the established members consider like we're parochial, we're problem solvers, we address issues as they are presented to us, which is at least in conflict, or at least in, it, kind of looks down upon quote unquote activism, which may well be driving young activists away from the community board structure. So that's what I have to say about that. Thank you, Kit, for bringing that to mind.
Right.
So, Dale, I had a quick question. So, I've had a similar experience in my near 6 years now on the board, where I have found young activists turned off by the, hey, we're a problem-solving group. We don't make noise, we solve problems. And they've turned away from it. What program, because we used to do a letter writing like 101, 201 internally within CB4. I'm not sure if we've done that during COVID or we have a plan to do that this year. But, I think strong activists also should like have like at least the basic understandings of parliamentary procedure, Robert rules, etc., and how to write a letter in order to be even like firmer leaders for tomorrow. What kind of programs would you like to see that would bring about youth activists or millennial or Gen Z activists in our community to apply to Community Board 4?
I think that's a great question, and that's on the kind of proactive tip. And I also feel like, it would be helpful for young activists who are accustomed to, have their methods and techniques and approaches to addressing, issues that they want to address, that it's possible to operate in multiple channels and multiple tracks. So for instance, like doing work on a community board, while it may be slower turning set of wheels, as opposed to, like engaging in protest or engaging in civic actions, those two can go hand in hand. So I agree with you. I think there should be kind of proactive programming that introduces, especially geared towards, sort of younger and activists from activist organizations, that their work can contribute to a community board structure. I don't know exactly what the programs would look like, but I do think and I know that Gail's office does do this kind of recruitment and training.
Right, but I'm saying like even internally, just so that we were like almost like surgical, because what you just described and what I've experienced, and Varen, I'll be very quick, is gatekeeping.
I was just going to add to your point. I think that the points that you guys are making, I wish you were there for the meeting last time around when we had Tanya come and speak to us. And one of the conversations was how this task force is being viewed even within the CB4 board and beyond. And, one of the points is that, are we the activist group? I mean, that's not what we want. That's the kind of label that begins to get applied to folks in a particular way. So that's
gatekeeping, Viren. Plain and simple, it's white misogynistic gatekeeping. And it's something that I've experienced my entire life. Everyone assumes that I'm white until they find out they don't. They go, "Oh shit!" Excuse my language, and they take back their words that they said in front of me, in confidence. That was not something that we had in chairs prior. It's an internal issue. I think we should be looking at it in this task force and being as proactive as possible in building out the programs to be forward-facing, to be welcoming to those who may be intimidated by the slow wheels of this this kind of work.
I don't know if you guys recall, one of the things we had talked about a little bit during the summer when we were coming up with different possible recommendations, and we had a whole thing focused on sort of various youth issues. And one of them was about, like, how do we get youth activists involved? And one of the discussions was about the fact that maybe we want to have like a youth board or, a youth advisory committee that wouldn't have to attend all of our meetings and they don't have to sit on, 2 committees and that whole thing. But maybe we could think of a way of carving it out so that that they can that a group can be involved in the way that they want to be involved and on the topics they want to be involved with without necessarily having to deal with the issues they don't want to be involved with. So there were a couple of these sort of preliminary discussions, but yeah, these are tricky issues. How do we get people involved? And frankly, who are super duper passionate about 1 or 2 topics or something. And frankly, they're probably still students and they have a lot of other commitments in their lives too, right? Like, yeah, I mean, these are tricky, but we would love that kind of involvement. I will say, when I served on a CEC, there is a seat for a high school student, and it was rarely filled because, they would reach out to various high school students, and then a high school student might apply and might start and attend 2 meetings and then say, you know what, I've got exams the next day, or I'm too busy, or I'm on a sports, blah, 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 whatever. They always dropped off. And maybe it's because they felt like their voice wasn't really being heard and that it was more of a check the box kind of thing. I don't know. But all I know is that at least where there have been roles on other community organizations for high school students, they have been very hard to fill.
Kitty, I'm just going to suggest along the same lines that maybe we have about 20 members in this task force, and maybe we can have smaller subgroups. And going back to Keith's idea of, the original thought about 3 buckets, and then Keith sort of brought it back up, and I actually have done that grouping. Maybe there is a way for us to have a little subgroup that does focus on those issues in particular, and then we take them back to to the full board.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the suggestions that I would make. And I think that's pretty much part of what sort of our recommendations as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is good. Kit, is your hand up again, or is that from before?
Yeah, it is. Couple quick thoughts. I just want to react to sort of what Dale and Chris were sharing. I can only speak for myself, but I would hope that we would be a board where we are both able to engage in problem solving and to have folks be active and share their perspectives on the issues that they're passionate about. It's troubling that we seem to see that as a binary. You can only be problem solving because if you are being an activist, you are in whatever way, shape, or form is being perceived, limiting our effectiveness. So hopefully we can do something about that. But then just also want to talk about we can get maybe a little bit more creative on how we provide entry points to folks into the community board. And that's, something that we can do sort of in terms of our policies, but also in terms of the way that we operate. Just to share a couple of examples, I have a friend who's on a CEC, and she shared with me that they have a stipend for babysitting. I would love a stipend for babysitting. Maria and I have had multiple conversations about the challenges of childcare and being on a community board, but also just thinking about with someone like a high school student who's going to have a lot of really valid reasons why they can't keep up the meeting schedule, which I personally think is pretty demanding. How do we engage them in different ways? Not just things like they only have to attend X number of meetings and participate on, Y topics, but, could they be involved in research projects? Could they be involved in meeting with specific agencies? Are there ways they can get course credit? I mean, if we were to engage with principals around some of these questions, I do think there could be a world where we land at some pretty exciting out of the box solutions. And I would push us to try to think about, I really like Katie's idea of like an advisory committee that maybe looks different, is entirely composed of young people. But if we, take those ideas and follow them to their logical conclusion, I think as long as we're willing to be flexible, there's a lot of ways that we can incorporate viewpoints that we historically have struggled to get onto the board.
Thanks. It's really.
Thank you. Katie, I just want to point out we missed actually inviting the public for asking questions when CCRB person was there. And I think we still have about 5 people. So I think we should open it up because that's the whole purpose of having them here.
But is she still on? I mean, are you saying to?
No, she's not there, but for this ongoing topic, if they want to comment on it, we should open it up.
Sure. I don't know if you can see it in a.
Yeah, I can see the names, but anyone from public attendees have any questions? Oh, okay. I have 2 people, so I'm going to start with Maya.
Hi guys, thanks so much for having this conversation. I'm wondering if you think that having remote CB meetings during the pandemic has helped to diversify attendees, and if amending open meeting law post-pandemic to allow remote access or sort of a dual, some could be remote, some could be in person, access would help these issues that you're talking about.
Maya, absolutely. There are boards throughout Manhattan that do live feed YouTube and engagement online. On the Upper East Side, they do one specifically, and many of the ones that I've sat down representing elected officials in Brooklyn have live feed and recordings. The accessibility issue has been long outstanding and unanswered here at CB4. And if there was something that a Manhattan Community Board, or rather a Manhattan Borough President, can do about it after 2021, I'm sure we would be grateful, including, like we've seen with the Euler process, far more engagement than what we had once seen before, when it was just required that you show up in person. So if there could be a hybrid model, that would be very useful. If that's a change in charter, then that's a change in charter, but it'd be great.
Yeah, no, I think Maya, you're totally right. I mean, I have attended more public hearings last year than ever before, to be very honest with you, at City Council hearings. I mean, I was on a hearing today about community land trust issue, which probably eventually going to come and sort of affect us as well in this community board. But no, you're right. I think access has improved quite a lot, and I see many more people actually attending these sessions online. And maybe, I don't know if there's a way to sort of put that, some sort of mechanism in place, but that would be one of the recommendations that I think this task force can make to Community Board 4.
It's not only the public here, it's also the members. I think attendance is like almost perfect.
Yes.
And that's a huge thing, huge thing.
And Viren, I think this would be the perfect time.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying, I mean, it's really nice to see everybody every time, over the many years that I've been on this board, this is first.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And Varen, this would be the perfect time to bring in that youth group, because they can participate remotely. Instead of having to come in, trek into a meeting hall, they can do it remotely from home and be participants and get into the process.
Exactly. Now, I'll just give you another example. Like I said, I teach, and for my studio, one site was in Harlem, the other one was PS 76. So believe it or not, the CB4 chair attended my students' review a couple of times. HRPT attended, CB9, CB10, they attended many of these students' reviews. We couldn't imagine doing that, prior to what happened, thanks to Zoom, they were willing to come and join us. And it was very, very helpful. We have Neil who has joined us.
Hi, my name is Neil Frias. I'm 32. I live on 57th and 11th. I actually worked with the census this past go around as a supervisor. And one thing that really struck out to me from this wonderful conversation is the importance of trying to reach out so that you can enhance membership, because I'm someone that wants to be very actively engaged. And I've attended a couple other meetings in different committees, and I've never really been told the process of how to apply. And I've been like piecemealing the information from reaching out to several different people in different committees and not really told these are the parameters, this is the requirement. It's not really easily laid out. I actually found out about the meeting from a street sign, the marquees on the sidewalk. That's how I found out about the meeting. So, I think having a little bit more of a streamlined approach of how you can access all of this information in one spot, so that anyone that does want to be very proactive in trying to attend and participate, they know what they have to do and what the guidelines are. If not, then it feels a little bit distant and it feels like, oh, it's the community board.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, great, how do I do that?
Hey, Neil, in the chat, Dale just shared the link for you to apply. There are really no parameters outside of the fact that you either work here, live here, or have business here.
Right.
And we're really glad that you saw the links kiosk out front and joined us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Wow, that's awesome.
Finally, something came good out of those links. Yes.
Right.
Otherwise I could get rid of them.
Good news. Oh my God.
Yeah. I was just going to say that as well, that CB4 sends out this e-blast with not exactly a flyer, but the sort of information and links and whatnot. Maybe some of those can be turned into flyers and posted, if that's okay, in NYCHA community centers, daycare centers, other places where people otherwise would not have access because they're not on the email list.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can definitely commit to reaching out and working with Jesse and making sure that if there isn't a flyer, that we can do one that is sort of eye-catching and nicely done. And then it will be sent to everybody on the task force. And just looking here at my notes, so if we're going to circulate the flyer, and then hopefully we'll also email everybody on the task force and encourage everyone to try and reach out to your group of contacts and to encourage this application process. And then on that email, we can also attach the flyer so you can talk to your network and then also maybe forward this flyer on.
Yeah, well, they're due. Those applications are due in a matter of days now.
Yeah, again, I still think it's like 2 weeks away, but yeah, we'll definitely.
February 15th, I believe.
Yeah.
I think they extended it. I think they extended it because of what's going on. And also the board, the office talked about Link New York, those billboards that are on the street corners. They're going to put the information about joining the board that you can apply to the board. So they're thinking about doing that.
So, and
we should ask them to put a QR code on that ad so people can scan the site and go immediately to the web page on their mobile device.
Perfect.
Yeah, good idea. And Neil, at least it sounds like you're reading those, and so you'll be able to encourage other people to read the links. That's great. But yeah, it's clearly really important that we get the message out more, because I think this is one of those things that, like, if you're in the know, you're in the know. But if you're not in the know, then you don't know. Sounds like I'm trying to sing a little song right now, and I'm not, I promise. Yeah, I think it would be really great if we can all reach out. But you're right, we need to do this. I mean, today's whatever day, Tuesday. We need to have something out, flyers done by like Friday, so we can circulate it out. But you're right, Leslie, we also have to figure out what the exact date is, so that we're all clear on whether or not it's been extended.
I think the date is the 1st. I mean,
February 1st. I just put it in the chat.
No, it is.
Okay, and it wasn't extended past that?
No, I think for funding, other capital funding stuff might have been extended to the 15th.
We just had an announcement at HK Dems. It's February 1st. I went back into my notes.
Yeah, no,
I just read it off the application page. It's February 1st.
Yes.
Okay.
I just did the minutes of the meeting where Gail told us, a couple of weeks ago about it. But no, it's the funding deadline. That's the 15th. Funding, capital funding.
All right.
Right.
So I guess February 1st is, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but next Thursday or Wednesday, Friday, something. I'll double check. Okay, but so we clearly
Monday. 2 Mondays from now.
2 Mondays from now? Okay.
2 weeks from yesterday.
All right. Okay, then hopefully we'll all reach out. And Maria, look at you getting a jump on all of us by already doing some of your reach out to your network. Well done. This has been a really good conversation. Thank you, everyone. I think a lot of good ideas have been shared here.
Yeah. Also, the good news is actually we are covering 2, 3, and 4 simultaneously. So I'm trying to be the timekeeper here. So
yeah. And I know we do have lots else to cover, but maybe we have to move some of this to our next meeting because, yeah, we've been on now, I know, more than 2 hours. What else is left on the agenda? Oops.
So we covered, that's what I'm saying, the 2, 3, and 4 are kind of covered, so to speak.
Well, except that we do still have to talk, but I don't know if we have time for it tonight. We do have to still talk about how we want, when people do go to these, to the police meetings, sort of, are we going to come up with a form and they just like fill it in a little bit, like, or are they reporting back to us? Or are they reporting back to the full board? We sort of have to think about what the involvement is, but maybe we just need to move that to the next meeting.
Yes, we do. And I think the intention was for them to actually report back to the task force if there was any item that the task force should be looking into. But I think for this meeting, before we conclude, this topic is way much more important not to discuss.
Yeah.
If I may comment. The police presence in Chelsea, in particular on 25th Street in the LA Chelsea houses, had dramatically increased because of increased activity in their vicinity. But unfortunately, because of the expected riots and the protests that have been happening, like what happened last night, and will probably be happening in the next couple of days, unfortunately. The police presence has been downgraded quite a bit, and there was a shooting last night on 25th Street.
Yeah. Hector, you froze.
Yeah.
Hector, we can't hear you.
Hector, if you can hear us.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Now we can. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. As I was saying, there was a shooting last night on 25th Street in the Chelsea houses again, which seems to be a repeated theme. And when that happens, unfortunately, it happens when the police have downgraded their presence, because of, I guess, manpower issues or whatever the case may be, or funding. I don't know. But anyway, we're going to hopefully have an emergency meeting discussing this. And I don't know if there's a quick fix to this at all. I don't think there is. But this is a repeated theme, especially in that area. This is like the 4th or 5th shooting we've had in about a year, I believe, if my numbers are correct. And that's not even including all the other incidences we're having there. Fulton Houses had one not too long ago, a couple of months ago. So we're hopefully going to have an emergency meeting concerning that. And I'm going to be contacting getting a hold of the 10th precinct to discuss this because the latest shooting happened last night between two individuals on 25th Street. So I don't have any solid details yet, but thankfully nobody was hurt, but there was a lot of bullets flying, and it's becoming a wild, wild west in the area, which it shouldn't be because there's a lot of good people to live here. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
Hector, it's way more than 4 or 5. I can tell you that right now.
Oh yeah, I believe you. Like I said, I was being
more.
conservative, but I know it's bad. It's really bad. It's getting worse.
Okay.
Just one quick note. Precinct 10th meeting is scheduled on January 27th at 7 p.m.
So that's next Tuesday?
That is next Tuesday.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely be on that.
And who else do we have signed up to cover the 10th precinct? Do you remember, Viren?
10th precinct, I think it was Hector. Right, Hector?
Oh no, it's me. It's definitely me. But I also
No,
had
there was somebody else.
Yeah, there was. Oh my goodness.
I'll check one second. I have it here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't heard from him in a while, so I hope all is well.
Okay. We'll try and follow up, and we'll make sure that you have a second, that there's at least one other rep from our task force there, or CB4. Okay. So we'll be in touch with you about that.
Can I just request that document be shared again, or
Yes.
do I already have access?
No, this I just put together yesterday, so I'm going to email it to you. This was just for the conversation. This is the document, the one that you're looking at on your screen, right, Maria?
Yes, the one we're looking at right now.
Yeah. Right. So this is basically the same document that you all have. Only difference is that remember we started with 3 buckets originally, and then we sort of condensed them to only 17 tasks, and now I've sort of put them back into the buckets again. So I will be sharing this because I think this was a great suggestion that came, it's a kind of, we came full circle when Kit suggested that we should do that. So yes, CB4 focused, community partnership and youth services focused, and the last one is city agencies focused, which originally used to be only NYPD focused, but now we have many more agencies that we're going to be looking into.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yes, this will be
Thanks.
Circulated fairly soon.
Okay, so then Viren, you wanted to address the Post Act?
Yes, I want to go back to that. This public oversight hearing is happening, and you all have received the email about it. We need to identify 1 or 2 folks who would like to sort of take this on and come back, and we can sort of discuss writing a letter which will be voted by full board. Unfortunately, I think the full board doesn't meet before the hearing itself.
Because when is the hearing, or what is the timeline?
I'm looking for that information. I had it here. I think I emailed it to everyone, but I'm going to look it up again. Let me stop sharing screen for a minute.
Okay. No worries.
I'd be more than interested.
Yes, those who want to sort of join the hearing, they need to sign up on their own. They can, more the merrier. But if 1 or 2 people want to sort of get organized about bringing back the comments, and then we can draft a letter before the hearing. I'm sorry. I misspoke. There is information that's been shared. You should go online, review that information before the hearing, and if we have any particular concerns that we want to raise at that hearing, we need to run them by the full board. That's what it is.
Or the full board or the executive board?
I was told it will have to be voted by full board. We will have to write a letter, and then we'll have to get approval on that letter from the full board. Let me just go back to that.
And we need to do that before the hearing?
That's what yes. Just give me a second. I'm looking up that email.
All right.
which I did send out, and now I'm blanking out a bit.
Okay. I'm happy, Viren, to review it and be one of the people who works on a letter. Yeah. Chris, you too? Okay. I see your head nodding, but your voice is off.
I'm nodding in the affirmative. Yes, Katie, please just send me the email and date. I'll be there.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Okay, so here is what it is. Bob Barrows, and I think Dale might remember, he was one of the people who spoke at that NYPD reform town hall meeting. He's going to join us next month for our task force meeting. And the public comment period for this particular post-act expires on February 25th. And we will be able to review and vote on the comments. And I'm going to copy this link and post it so people can actually review that. And basically, we are supposed to review the stuff that they have put up online. And if we have any comments, we can write a letter and submit it to, you're right, Katie, submit it. It has to be voted by the exec. Okay, so I'm going to send this link right now. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit scattered, but I'll be emailing this information out again.
Okay. So
everyone has it. But this is the link to the, wow, badly copied, 1 second.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So the document is here, and I'm going to try it one more time. Yes, this time it worked better. So that's what the sort of information is. We are required to review it, and if we identify 2 or 3 folks who would want to come back and give us comments, we will combine them into a letter, which will have to be voted by the exec. And that is going to happen before the hearing. So we'll be in time for that. Not the full board. Jesse's initial suggestion was that you'll have to go to the full board, but then he recognized that the full board meeting doesn't happen before the hearing. So he said, we will be voting on it at the exec.
Okay. So yeah, I'm happy to be one of the people who reviews this and helps come up with a proposal. And you too, Viren? And Chris, lovely. And Leslie, great. Anybody else? Great. All right. And Leslie. Okay. So then we can be in touch with each other separately or offline. Great. And then I do think we should talk briefly about our agenda next meeting and then wrap up, and we'll carry some of this over to our next meeting. So why don't we can talk about sort of how we're going to do the reporting out about the Precinct Community Council meetings at the next meeting, Viren? And then you said we also have a report about surveillance technology, right? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Someone is coming for the next meeting. Robert, his name is Bob Barrow. And I have already forwarded that information to the task force. So everyone should have it in their email. If not, I will resend it.
Okay.
So he's going to join us along with one more person from NYPD. We don't know who that would be, but he's the legal counsel who actually did speak about NYPD's policies and protocols for using surveillance technologies rather. And he's getting a sign off from NYPD to come and join us next month. He's practically confirmed it, but he's still waiting for that. Jesse is still waiting for that confirmation.
Great. Hector, you have a suggestion?
No, just a comment on your question before. It was Alan Oster who was on attending the meetings with me for the 10th precinct.
Oh, okay.
What happened, so
okay.
Yeah, but I don't know if he's still involved or not though, because I haven't seen him at these meetings recently.
Yep. Okay, we can check with him.
And Yeah, and Viren, can you do me a favor and send me that information for the next 10th precinct meeting, because I can't seem to copy and paste it from my tablet for some reason. If you could just email it to me, I appreciate it.
I will email you everyone the link, as well as the information about NYPD surveillance technology presentation next month, and all of the stuff that we talked about. And I will also include the document, which sort of now breaks down all the recommendations into 3 buckets. And the good news with that is that now we have some common names, so we know that how many people are working for each bucket item, set of bucket items.
Great.
Great, thanks.
So next month, the first item on the agenda is going to be that presentation by Bob Barrow and the NYPD person, who that might be. So that's going to be the first agenda item. Second agenda item is we will look through. Sorry, 1 second. I'm moving through the agenda items here so we can talk about it. 1 second. This grouping for approved task force recommendations, I will circulate them by tomorrow, and we will probably discuss that. So that becomes the second agenda item. And this is just to confirm, we went back and forth when James was there. Equitable streets and sidewalk is one of the recommendations actually already included on our CB4 approved recommendations.
Yeah.
So to have that conversation within the task force, we already approved it. So I think we will have a little more detailed conversation about that, along with Christine and Dell.
Okay. And I guess that's part of the city agencies thing.
Yes, yes, it is. Let me see if I can share that somewhere.
Okay. Good.
That's pretty much it.
And then I guess we'll also be
It's
talking
actually
about
community partnership oriented. Sorry, I just highlighted it.
Oh.
Probably you can't read. 1 second.
No, but I do think, well, I don't know. We can think about organizationally. It may make more sense under city agencies.
Oh yes, oh yes. But that's the conversation we will have next meeting when we, we'll circulate. In fact, we will circulate this document and people can mark them up and sort of, see where they fit better. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay. And then we'll be getting an email out to everybody this week about the deadline and encouraging everybody on the task force, whether or not they were here this evening or not, to be reaching out to their network to encourage people to apply for community board membership. And then we'll also explore with Jesse and others sort of what the possibilities are. Could we have like a youth board, or sort of how we might be able to have some creative solutions to structuring and encouraging more youth activists to apply. That makes sense?
I think it does.
Okay, guys, you've put in a lot of time, so thank you for sticking with us this whole evening. And to our community members who've called in as well. Is there anything else we have left, Karen?
No, I think that's pretty much it. If there's anything that you want to sort of draw our attention to, please let us know via email, because sometimes I can, miss 1 or 2 items here and there. So feel free to sort of shoot an email.
Yeah, that's a good point. Great. All right, then I think with that, we let you all step away finally from your computers this evening. So.
Oh, by the way, one quick point, Katie. The letter will have to be first voted by the task force, I'm told.
Okay.
But we have to vote. Every member has to vote.
Yeah. All right, we'll circulate it out to everybody. Yep, that's fair. Absolutely. We want to get everybody's input. Good. All right, we're committed to that. All right, then thank you, everybody. And
thank you, everybody.
Yeah, stay safe.
Thank you. No, I was just saying thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Be well. Bye.
Thanks, Mike.